So I'm recording this course for the online students, right? And I just want to let you guys know some things that before we start. Let's share the screen. That now is in a very important time in the history of Utah because we're going through a spike, a second wave, if you will, of the coronavirus. It just hit us kind of suddenly. I'm going to show you the numbers here. There's Johns Hopkins University, which runs these numbers. And they are the ones worldwide that keep this for every country, everybody. They've been doing this for 100 years. They track infectious diseases. They're probably tracking several diseases at the same time. But of course, this is the one. And Utah, after that holiday we just had, wow, big spike. And so now is the time. Now look up here at the screen. Look, listen to me. Let's look eye to eye here. Now's the time we have to do our part. Now's the times we have to make sure we're wearing our masks, make sure we're socially distancing, make sure we're protecting each other until we get through this latest spike. And it's really important that we do that, and we can. I mean, this is what we should be all about. Other states are also having some interesting moments. Here's Texas. Texas is also going through this. Look at their spike. They thought they had it under control. They had it down to about 2,000 cases a day for a state that big. That's doing well and going down further. And then all of a sudden they had the same holiday we did, right back up there. And so Texas really struggled back here in the midsummer. They were just one of the hot spots. So it's really important that we do our part. Now, as a dual major in political science and history, I know some things about history. And one of them is that when we look back at the 1918 pandemic, what people don't realize is that the 18 pandemic, right, hit that spring, winter and spring, and it was bad, no doubt about it. But then, unlike the coronavirus, it kind of took the summer off, right? It was spread differently. The coronavirus is spread through the air, so that's why we have to wear masks. Well, they wore masks then too, because it was also aerosol, but also by touch. So it's important we wipe things down. But then what happened in the fall? Remember, they didn't have air conditioning or anything like that. So that may be part of the factor where we are still inside, even in the summer, and air conditioning, tight rooms, that kind of thing. Restaurants and theaters and things. But they got it again in 19. And that next year, the second wave, they called it, was worse than the first. So it's really important that you protect each other and yourselves and do what your instructors in the school is asking you to do. It's really important. Now, right now, I've got 22 students doing this course entirely online, which is great. I mean, they're doing an amazing job. I didn't know how it was going to work, but oh my goodness, they're just doing wonderful work. And so if you do have to take some time out, maybe your family goes on vacation. I got a note from a student says, yeah, we're going camping for a week. I said, well, that's great, go. So they can do the 2 lectures right from home. And or if they can get internet connection up in the canyon, maybe they could even do it from there. And so it's always the same. We have 2 lectures. I am cutting back to 1 study guide a week because I think I was giving you too much work, and a little apology there early on. But in the study guide, there'll be at least 2 assignments, right? We'll always now have state test questions, which you guys are passing. So far, everybody's passing the state test. And then, of course, we'll have, things relative to the lecture. But the big assignments are the speeches you did, the 4 speeches, and the debate coming up on Tuesday. So if you need to do all this from home, you can. It's the same class. In fact, we're recording this one right now to share with the online students. So let's get to the regularly scheduled lecture here. This is 13. And again, we're way past, we're closing in on halfway through the course. So we're getting close. In fact, the election will be more than halfway through the course. So that's pretty exciting too. That's 40 days away from the election. It's coming very quickly, and they're voting in almost half a dozen states already. By next week, they'll be in a dozen states. The next week, there'll be 38 states voting. So it's really 50 days of voting, depending on the state. Now, we were looking for tipping points, right? And we saw maybe in the last poll that I showed you that maybe Rage had an effect and the Atlantic article had an effect because Biden kind of pulled away a little bit. He got up to like 278, as I remember. Well, not this morning. These states, Pennsylvania, we're going to talk about Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and this part of Maine, became what we call too close to call. In other words, when you do a poll, there's statistically a margin of error where you're not quite sure. And it's usually around 3% to 5%, depending on your sample size and your statistics. So Biden may still be ahead in Pennsylvania, but it's too close to call because really the error rate is such that it could go either way. So now all of a sudden he's down to 260, which is the lowest he's been since midsummer. So Mr. Trump didn't go up, but there's much more open ground to run in. So who knows? And it's too early to note the Ruth Bader Ginsburg effect, but this was an interesting little shift overnight. Now, always the tipping point are the debates. So while we've had a pretty static election, narrowing as they do traditionally historically, the debates could be the decider. And the first debate will be the most watched debate, by the way. So I encourage you to do that. And we'll be doing all the debates, vice president debate, whatever. And these are like the DNC speeches and the RNC speeches. There were 4 of those. They counted like with 30 points each. These are going to count more. All right. So the 3 debates will count more. And they're really important that you open up the study guide and then you fill them out. And it's not going to be so bad as to just, you're just going to basically get the key points from each side and then give your opinion as to who won and why you think they won and whether or not this is going to give them a bounce. So it'll be a lot like the speeches. It's not going to be like this overall demanding kind of thing, but it will be you giving your thoughts. Now, I want you to look at this here as well. Remember, we keep talking about whose spin becomes the truth. What I do not want you to do is listen to the commentary after the debates. Because if you're listening here on Fox News or if you're listening here on MSNBC, you're going to get a spin. All of them are going to spin it. And when they spin it, you'll forget what you saw. And that has been proven. If somebody says, oh yeah, but this, and you go, oh yeah, okay, well, maybe I got that wrong. And if you listen to the spin meisters, they're trying to sway you politically one way or the other. Whatever bubble you're listening to will sway your opinion. Don't do that. Basically, come up with your own. Now, you have a bias. I have a bias. We all have a bias. We're in one of these, frames of reference. We're going to see it with our biases. So we have to try to get our biases out and look more objectively. And don't let somebody spin you into an opinion. Be brave. Trust your own opinions. Trust your own instincts. And don't let somebody else sway you until you've had a chance to process it yourself. Then after, of course, listen to the different commentaries and see how your ideas stack up with theirs. That's perfectly cool. But when you write the paper, make it your thoughts. Don't be a ditto head, a copy machine that's just copying what somebody else said on a particular station or whatever. So I think you'll enjoy it more that way. I think you'll also learn to trust your own opinions more. And you'll tell me whether you think it's a tipping point or not. All right, now, 4 speeches, 3 debates, and 1 research paper. Now, you can't pass the class and you can't get college credit unless you do the research paper. Now, the research paper this year will be different. It will come in a study guide. You will not have to worry about formatting MLA. None of that. We don't have time for that this year. We only meet 2 days a week instead of 5, so there's no way we can do things as usual. So you're going to write your research paper in the study guide. Now you can write it in Google Docs and copy and paste it over. That's fine. And there'll be a place for you to put your sources. So you're going to have 3 sources, but you can just list them, and they can just be websites at this point. The point is that I'm more concerned about what you think than the format of the paper. And so I don't have the month I usually spend going back and forth with you, make sure your MLA is perfect. That can't happen this year. There's no possible way that can happen. We only meet 2 days a week instead of 5. But the important part has always been of the paper has been your thoughts. Now, here's how the assignment, right? I'm going to give it to you right now. So you've got 4 speeches done, 3 debates to come, and your research paper. Those are the key things. And there'll be some questions in the study guide that you'll have to do in order to make sure you're listening to the lectures. But let's go ahead and look at what the paper is going to be. Ready? Here we go. Look up here. In fact, you might want to take a picture. Grab your phones and take a picture. We've had 14 presidents, 15 counting Donald Trump, since the beginning of the modern electoral era. And so we're starting with Hoover and we're going to Trump, from Hoover to Trump. Again, totally discount the polls that said Mr. Trump's at 44, 43 in the red zone. Forget that. That is totally ridiculous. He has a blank slate until the election's over. Now, when the election's over, if he wins, that changes your essay. If he loses, that changes your essay. Let me explain what I mean. What I want you to do is I want you to look at this list of 14 presidents, and now we're going to insert somewhere in this list Mr. Trump's presidency. Right? So when the election's over, if he wins the election, then you can go all the way up here to Eisenhower, and you can slot him in where you think he fits from top to bottom in this list from best to worst. So I put Hoover, who of course was ranked 36th, as 14. I've got Eisenhower, who was number 6, so he's number 2. FDR was number 2, so he's elected 4 times. Here's the deal. He was elected 4 times. This guy elected twice. This guy elected twice. He was killed twice. You see that you get your one-termers. Nixon was the one exception, but he had Watergate. If the president wins a second term, you can go all the way up to the blue zone. You can't put him above FDR. If you do that, I will laugh and make you redo the paper, because there is no way on the planet Earth that any of these presidents rise to that level. Not in any sane or logical world. Elected 4 times, got us through the Great Depression, won World War II, biggest event in American history. And so there's no possibility of you putting him above that. If you do, I'll just say redo it, because there's no argument you could make that would be logical enough to make that happen. But you could put him here or here or here or here, and that would be fine. If he loses the election, then that's going to take a hit. So you can start here with the green and work your way down logically. Because if he loses the election, there's no way he's an Eisenhower. There's no way he's a Truman. And Kennedy was killed, or we don't know what he could have done. And that would be kind of an illogical thing to do. I might actually move Kennedy to green, and you could actually put him there. So I may change my mind on Kennedy, but I won't change my mind on any of the others. Okay, so that's the thing. Find the slot. Now here's the assignment. You ready? Say you decide to put him above Obama and between LBJ. And we're going to show you a lot about Obama today so you can see the rival between them. So you decide, okay, Trump's a better president. He wins 2 terms. He's going to undo everything Obama ever did. So I'm going to put him right here. So what you have to do is learn everything. Listen carefully. Raise your hand if you're listening. You have to learn everything you can about LBJ and explain why he is a slightly better president than Trump. Then you have to learn everything there is about Obama and explain why he is a slightly less effective president than Trump. So you're not really writing so much about Trump. Yes, you have to include facts about what Trump did as you make your arguments, but you're comparing why your top pick that's just above Trump is a stronger president and why the president below is a weaker president. That's the assignment. It's really two essays, one on the president above and one on the president below, using what you know about the Trump presidency to go back and forth and explain why you put them where you said. Now, say, for example, say you put them above Nixon and Ford, right? Well, then you'd have to argue Ford and Nixon and justify putting Mr. Trump in the middle. If you come up here and you decide, okay, he's better than Kennedy, and I'm going to change Kennedy to green. He's better than Kennedy, and here's why. So you have to know all about what Kennedy did. all about what Truman did. And that's your essay. You're analyzing Truman and JFK in light of President Trump. So you can start thinking about this now. You can't start writing it yet because obviously we have to find out if he's going to win a second term. We have to see if the American people thinking he's succeeding with the challenges that he's facing. No president in an election year in my lifetime has faced bigger challenges, nor overcome more opposition. Is it a Katrina moment for him, or is it a moment of heroism? Who knows? You're going to decide that. Okay, so now let's kind of take a look at this. Another piece of your essay could be, who controls the House and the Senate next January? If Mr. Trump pulls out a narrow win, and it'll be narrow, it'll be tight if he does, it'll be in the Electoral College, he will not win the popular vote again. So he'll be the only president in history never to win the popular vote twice, because there's no possible way he's going to get that. But he could win in the Electoral College and be the only president to win twice in the Electoral College, having never won the popular vote. But if he does that, he'll win just enough in just the right states to leave the Senate in the hands of the Republicans. If Biden pulls out a win, chances are the Democrats control, and he has a chance to be a great president because he'll control the Senate and the House too. So we're going to keep focused now on this election in the Senate because it's just as important as you can see, because the Senate approves Supreme Court justices. And the current Republicans under Mitch McConnell's leadership has spent the last 4 years stacking the court with conservative judges. Now, they're well within their right to do that. They won the election. Elections have consequences, right? So in this election, if you want more conservative judges on the courts, then the vote's simple. But if you want less, then the vote is also simple if the court is a big issue for you. And so people will be voting, some of them, on the court. And so that's kind of important to know. So we're going to keep our eyes on the Senate, right? Because this Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing away opened the door for Trump to probably win in the Electoral College. It may be a tipping point. We'll find out. Now let's talk about Obama, for example, okay? Was Obama a great president? Well, he's bouncing all over the place. You got 18 to 8, and he's bouncing all over. Why? Because of these two factors. If Mr. Trump wins a second term, he will erase everything that Obama ever did. That Mr. Obama and Mr. Trump really don't like each other, and Mr. Trump wants to erase the legacy of Obama from history. That's really clear. He won the election. It's his right to do it. And if he wins the second term, that'll go. And will show that Obama was a fluke. He got an electorate that would only just vote for him because they liked him, but it didn't transfer to the Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton, his electorate, his group of voters didn't show up for Hillary Clinton. In fact, some of them voted for Trump. So as a result here, if Biden wins the election, then this is preserved and his legacy is preserved, particularly healthcare. And so he'll go up. If Mr. Trump wins, Obama's looking at 18 with Mr. Trump ahead of him. All right, well, saying that, obviously, Mr. Obama wants you to vote, right? And so he did this viral video a couple years ago, and let's go ahead and have some fun. Elections should be fun. And we've had enough heaviness with Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing and all of that we need to lighten the mood a little bit. So here it is, a web video presented by...
Look, a lot of our elected officials are uninformed. Okay, is there any kind of introduction, or are we just plunging in and then you guys will... I don't care about politics. Look, I don't care about Pokemon, but that doesn't mean it won't keep on coming back. That's actually what people in power are betting on, that you'll check out, that you won't vote. And when you opt out, that's what allows other people to essentially fill that void. It allows them to do nothing about the things that you'd like to see government do. So if you really want to throw a wrench in their plans, throw them out. Vote in somebody better. Next, why bother voting when I can't relate to the candidates? Now, this is actually a good question. For way too long, politicians haven't been representative of America as a whole. The But that's changing this year. More women are running for office than ever before. More LGBT candidates are running for office. First-time candidates, young veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, young leaders from across the political spectrum. So this year, more than any other year, you have the chance to change the face of politics so that it looks more like your own. You remember those hearings where members of Congress were asking Mark Zuckerberg questions like they'd never used the internet before? It's because they haven't. Here's your chance to vote for people who actually know what the internet is. My vote doesn't matter. The last presidential election turned on fewer than 100,000 votes in 3 states. More people go to Coachella. Look, when it comes to something like Dancing with the Stars, people actually think their vote matters. But a vote in this November's election actually does matter. It could elect people who make our criminal justice system fair and your student loans easier to afford. And by the way, you wouldn't let your grandparents pick your playlist. Why would you let them pick your representative who's going to determine your future? Midterm elections are boring. Let me know when we're talking about a presidential race. Sometimes these elections are even more important than a presidential race. This November, 36 states are picking governor. Every single spot in the House of Representatives is on the ballot. Fill them with people who care about what you care about. Elections, by the way, aren't boring. You know what's boring? Scrolling through endless photos of your dinner on Instagram. That's boring. I don't know the candidates well enough. I'm uninformed. There are people running for office who don't think women should get equal pay for equal work, who don't think we should do anything about schools getting shot up, or who think we shouldn't raise the minimum wage for people who are working their tails off every day but still can't afford to pay the rent. Vote them out. Vote for somebody who shares your values. Also, this thing has something called Google. You can't use Google to figure out which candidates on your local ballot think that the earth is flat and climate change is a hoax. Google is super easy to read. I don't know where I'm supposed to vote. This one's easy. Do you know your address? If you do, just go to vote.org, plug in your address, it'll tell you where to vote. It's that simple. There's no joke here. Which is, there shouldn't be, because it's just like pretty simple. All right, next. I don't have time to vote. I understand that it's not always easy to find time to vote on a Tuesday. That's why in every state, you can get an absentee ballot, which you can mail in or drop off ahead of Election Day. And in 37 states, you can actually vote early, which is like going to a private Jay-Z Beyonce concert, just without Jay-Z and Beyonce. But take some friends anyway, beat the lines, because like most things, voting's more fun when you do it together. Share the video and tell your friends to vote on November 6th.
All right, there you go. And so that's just some fun, but it also explains, 37 states, I didn't realize there's that many, like Utah allows early voting. And that's important because, especially now with the coronavirus spikes, we need to protect each other. And so vote early, vote by mail, vote absentee. And there's going to be more votes. This is going to be one of the biggest elections. Well, it'll be the biggest. There'll be more votes cast in this election than in any other election in American history. So, okay, so will Obama be a great president? Well, it depends on who wins this next election. He's going to bounce down big time if Mr. Trump wins again, but he'll bounce up if Mr. Trump loses. So there you go. Now, we didn't finish some important stuff with John McCain, right? John McCain and Mr. Trump really didn't get on at all. McCain opposed him as a candidate. When he became president, he opposed some of his policies. And here's the most important moment between John McCain and President Trump. What happened was this. After President Obama passed the Affordable Care Act through Congress, he had House and Senate for 2 years. They passed this act. It covered 40 million Americans, eliminated pre-existing conditions. By the way, changed student loans too. They threw that in just for fun so that you pay less on student loans. It was a big deal. But Republicans hated it. And so they campaigned for the next 8 years. Well, they're still campaigning. It's 12 now. We're going on 12 years. 12 years against it. We got to kill it. We got to kill it. It's bad. It's unconstitutional. It's like communism, socialism. It's all these terrible isms. But the thing is, today it's pretty popular because guess what? Millions of Americans now have health care that didn't have it before. Nevertheless, when the Republicans got control of the House and the Senate and the presidency in the first couple of years of Donald J. Trump's presidency, they voted to kill it. They killed it in the House of Representatives. Then it went to the Senate to be killed. And here's how it works. 50 senators, okay? 50 senators, that looks how the vote was going to be. The deciding vote would have been Mike Pence. If there's a tie, 50-50 in the Senate, then the vice president breaks the tie. And it looked like they were at that point where they had 50 votes to kill it. It would have tied. So they needed the vice president to break the tie. The vice president, you should know and pay attention because this is a great trivia question for the state test. The vice president is the president of the Senate. That's not confusing at all, is it? But that's the way they wrote it in the Constitution. The vice president shall be the president of the Senate and shall break ties. That's really all he does, but still it's important. Well, here's the deal. John McCain was dying of cancer. He pulls himself off of his deathbed, literally, flies to DC for this vote. Here's Mitch McConnell right here. Here's all these other Republicans waiting for the 50 votes they needed to kill the Affordable Care Act. McCain walks down on the floor, and he'd been campaigning against it more than anybody. He hated it from day one. But he said, Republicans, you don't have an alternative plan. And until you pass an alternative, I got too many people in Arizona that depend on this. So you pass a plan that will make them safe, then I'm going to vote for it. But until you have a plan, I'm going to go thumbs down. And he literally walked and went thumbs down. And they got 49 votes against it, which meant the Affordable Care Act was saved. Now you're asking yourself, why don't the Republicans have a plan? Because this was their plan. Obamacare was the Republican plan that they put together in the 90s. And then one Republican governor named Mitt Romney passed it in Massachusetts. Romney Care it was called. And it was the Republican plan for healthcare. Passed it in Massachusetts, covers all those people in Massachusetts. They have the best healthcare in the country. Mitt Romney did that. Obama, realizing that, it's a pretty good plan, he gets Romney's people to come and show him how to build a plan. So they built this plan and they called it, the Affordable Care Act, which then politics started calling it Obamacare. Now, Romney, Republican plan, Democrats adopted plan, Republicans don't have an alternative. They're killing basically the plan they came up with in the 90s. So McCain goes, not until you have a plan. And that was, of course, the biggest legacy of Barack Obama. And it really, of course, would irritate the president. The other thing was this whole idea of the birther movement. Now, it got a little bit weird, right? Because what happened was there was a blogger, a forger, who basically got some cotton business paper from the old days. And he was able to manufacture a birth certificate. And it was actually taken from an Australian birth certificate, but he faked it to make it look like a Kenyan birth certificate from colonial days. And he gets this old 1940 Royal Model KMM manual typewriter to type all the stuff in. And he posted it online. See, here is Obama's birth certificate from Kenya. People bought it. We had a lawyer who took this to district federal court and say, see, we have proof that Obama can't be president. And been president for 2.5 years. We're going to 3 years now. But no, he can't be president because he was born in Kenya, which is, of course, the whole thing was ludicrous. And after it went to court, this blogger laughed his head off, crumpled it up, and wrote, "You've been punked" on it, and posted it back online. And so and there's still people that believe Obama was born in Kenya, if you can imagine, right? This is called misinformation, but let's just lay it all to rest. This is what you need to know for the state test. According to the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, if you're born here, regardless of what your parents are, you are a citizen. Period. End of story. And if either of your parents are a citizen, you're a citizen too. Even a Republican Congress got so fed up with this argument that they voted unanimously to state that, yes, the president is a citizen. But you're asking, why can't the courts make a decision on this? Why did that federal district court throw it out? Not just because it was forgery, because they hadn't proven it was forgery yet, but they just threw it out because the courts will never define this. What does it mean to be natural born? We don't know. The courts have never decided what that means, and they never will. They will never hear this case. Remember, the Supreme Court doesn't have to hear any case it doesn't want to? Well, here's the thing. They'll never hear this because they believe it's up to the American people to decide what that means. It's up to us to decide. And some people decided that, no, Mr. Obama wasn't president. Okay, well, they can have their opinions. Everybody has their opinion, but you do have to have a few facts behind it. Now, there was a thing called the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We don't do it anymore, right? Since Mr. Trump's been president, but all the way back to Reagan, other presidents. And what they do, the White House correspondents throw this big dinner, invite all the senators, congressmen, both parties, both political groups, everybody in prominence all gets into this room and just has a good laugh. They just have a good time. So you got people roasting the president. It's called a roast. They mock the president right there. He's sitting right there. And they have fun. And it's just a great night. It's a fundraiser. And it had been going on for years until it ended. But this one was important. And I'm going to play this and just kick back and just enjoy the comedy of it, because this is Mr. Obama now laughing at himself and at this whole thing with the birther movement. And yeah, let's see if we can do this.
I've been on Noon for 4 months. I've lost 27 pounds, and I feel like I got my life back.
Well, I've been on Noon. Okay, here we go. Correspondence dinner just after the release of the birth certificate.
The President of the United States. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American. Fight for what's right. Fight for life. When it comes crashing down and it hurts inside, you gotta take a stand, it don't have to hide. If you hurt my friends, then you hurt my pride. I gotta be fair, I can't let it slide. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American. Fight for what's right. Fight for life. All right, everybody, please have a seat. My fellow Americans, mahalo. It is wonderful to be here at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. What a week. As some of you heard, the state of Hawaii released my official long-form birth certificate. Hopefully, this puts all doubts to rest.
Now, I want to pause it because did you see Donald J. Trump is in the audience? And this is maybe an important moment in history because of what happens next. Are you ready? Here we go. With Mr. Trump in the audience, he's talking about, hey, this birth certificate deal. Here we go.
But just in case there are any lingering questions, tonight, I'm prepared to go a step further. Tonight, for the first time, I am releasing my official birth video. Now, I warn you, no one has seen this footage in 50 years, not even me. But let's take a look. Oh well. Back to square one. I want to make clear to the Fox News table that was a joke. That was not my real birth video. That was a children's cartoon. Call Disney if you don't believe me. They have the original long form version. Anyway, it's good to be back with so many esteemed guests, celebrities, senators, journalists, essential government employees, non-essential government employees. You know who you are. I'm very much looking forward to hearing Seth Meyer tonight. He's a young, fresh face who can do no wrong in the eyes of his fans. Seth, and enjoy it while it lasts. Yes, I think it is fair to say that when it comes to my presidency, the honeymoon is over. For example, some people now suggest that I'm too professorial, and I'd like to address that head on by assigning all of you some reading that will help you draw your own conclusions. Others say that I'm arrogant, but I found a really great self-help tool for this: my poll numbers. I've even let down my key core constituency, movie stars. Just the other day, Matt Damon. I love Matt Damon. Love the guy. Matt Damon said he was disappointed in my performance. Well, Matt, I just saw the Adjustment Bureau, so right back at you, buddy. Of course, there's someone who I can always count on for support, my wonderful wife, Michelle. We made a terrific team at the Easter egg roll this week. I'd give out bags of candy to the kids, and she'd snatch them right back out of their little hands. Snatched them. And where's the National Public Radio table? You guys are still here. That's good. I couldn't remember where we landed on that. I know you were a little tense when the GOP tried to cut your funding, but personally, I was looking forward to new programming like No Things Considered. Or, wait, don't fund me. Of course, the deficit is a serious issue. That's why Paul Ryan couldn't be here tonight. His budget has no room for laughter. Michelle Bachmann is here, though, I understand, and she is thinking about running for president. which is weird because I hear she was born in Canada. Yes, Michelle, this is how it starts. Tim Pawlenty. He seems all-American, but if you heard his real middle name, Tim Posney Pawlenty. What a shame. My buddy, our outstanding ambassador, John Huntsman, is with us. Now, there's something you might not know about John. He didn't learn to speak Chinese to go there. Oh, no. He learned English to come here. And then there's a vicious rumor floating around that I think could really hurt Mitt Romney. I heard he passed universal health care when he was governor of Massachusetts. Someone should get to the bottom of that. And I know just the guy to do it. Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier. No one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac? All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night. Well handled, sir. Well handled. Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we've got up there. So, yes, this has been quite a year in politics, but also in the movies.
We'll pause it right there because hopefully now you know the rest of the story. I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently Mr. Trump was seething after that. And according to what some people say, that's when he decided for sure to run for president. And maybe that explains this photograph and why, while Mr. Obama was in the spirit of that comedy roast, well, we haven't had one since while the president has been in, Mr. Trump. And the other thing is that he's committed to undoing the Obama legacy. And so this election has an impact on where both of them will rank in history. And that's going to be kind of your call to make. But here's what I do know. I do know that women will make the decision this year. That's the vote that seems to be the most important. 100 years after they get the right to vote in the 19th Amendment. When we look at the voter pool, the betting group, the group that looks at the odds of somebody winning or losing, you can still win the election 22%, right? You pull the slot machine and if you got a 22% chance to win, those are good odds considerably. But right now, as of last night, this is what they say on 538 is the odds of winning. They also say, and this is probably more important than that, and that is what state is the tipping point state? This state was decided by just a few, like 50,000 votes or something, very, very small number. And right now, Biden is leading slightly, 51 to 47%, with things tightening up. But let's go ahead and look at this. Here's the state. Now, if you're in the urban areas, you tend to vote for the Democrats, right? If you're in the rural areas, you tend to vote for the Republicans. And you can see that, where the vote broke down by county. And it's this area here and this area here. It's the suburbs of Philadelphia where this will be decided, where basically mothers with college degrees live. The suburbs of Philly are the most important group in this entire election. Last time they voted for Mr. Trump. What will they do this year? As we go through some of these stats, take a look at just Pennsylvania here. If it's a city over 50,000 people, they voted for Hillary Clinton. If they're in the suburbs, though, it was close, but they voted for President Trump. They're 49% of the voters. Urban city, 34%, overwhelmingly for the Democrats. But the suburbs are fairly split, but lean toward the Republicans, 49%. This is where the election will be decided, with that group right there. If you're living out in the rural areas, though, this is what the shocker of this election was last time, is that when it came to the rural vote, Mr. Trump cleaned up. People who hadn't voted in their entire lives in those rural areas voted. Pennsylvania has been described as this. It's been described as big city, Philadelphia in the east, Pittsburgh in the west, and Alabama in the middle. That the rural voters of this state are as conservative as the folks are in Alabama. And so when you campaign, you have to campaign to the urban area, you have to campaign to the suburbs, and you have to campaign to the rural area if you're going to win. So Mr. Trump needs every vote he can get in the rural areas, and he's got to hold on to the percentage of suburban voters, mainly suburban women. If he can do that, he wins. And so this state, I think, is the tipping point state. I think it's the most important one. And we're going to go through a few more stats before the bell rings here. It's 70% white, 12% black, 11% Latino, 4% Asian, and others are fit in to get to 100%. Among the white voters of the state, 58% for Donald Trump, 8% of African Americans, 29% of Latinos, and you can see Asian 29%. So this really matters. Also, age makes a difference. The younger you are, the more likely you to vote for Hillary Clinton, less likely for Trump. But the older you get, my age group, you look down here, they're for Trump. Are they going to stay for Trump? Or because of coronavirus, they're going to change their minds? That's the big tell. So it could be this older group shifting, and you only have to shift 1% among women and 1% among 65 and older to turn this over to Biden. Does that make sense? So we're not talking about big shifts here. We're talking about 1 or 2 or 3%. If you can shift the male to female ratio just slightly, women are 52% of the electorate. More women vote than men. 54% for Hillary in the last election, 41% on the male side, but Mr. Trump won 53%. So men and women makes a big difference. Also, what makes a big difference is your education level. If you have a high school or less, or just an associate degree or less, you tend to vote for Mr. Trump. But the more college education you have, college degree or graduate degree, it shifts dramatically the other way. So these are what we call demographics. And so the point is if you're going to win a state like Pennsylvania, you have to understand these demographics, and you have to run your campaign to try to change that vote 1 or 2 or 3% in your favor in a couple of those groups. And if you can do that, you'll win. So when it comes, why do we do so many polls? The campaigns poll every day in these states because they got to find out, wait a minute, are people in the suburbs going to show up? And if they're trending toward your opponent, you've got to run a campaign to get them back into your camp. And right now, the ferocious fight we're having in Pennsylvania for who's going to win, and I think it will be the deciding state. So at least right now it is. We'll watch this carefully and see if it changes. But right now, Biden slight lead, but it can be erased in a day. It can be erased in one bad debate performance. So that's why Tuesday matters so much. And you can see in your lives right now that elections have consequences. Now, you yourself may not be able to vote, but you are an influencer. You can influence other people to get registered. Ask them, are you registered? And if they say no, say, well, do it now. And you can just go online and do that. So you can get a mail-in ballot and vote in this election. And you can influence them one way or the other, whatever you feel is important in your life. So don't feel like you're powerless because you're not old enough to vote. You are not powerless. Just like with this coronavirus, you're not powerless. You can wear a mask. You can socially distance. You can protect yourself and others. We can fight back against this virus. And we can fight for the America that we want to see in the future. And again, whatever you choose, left, right, center, all good with me. And it'll be fun to see what you say in your debate papers. Okay, so that's pretty much it for today. Let's go ahead and stop sharing the video and stop the recording.